Hi, I'm Brianna McAdoo, and this is my ATP Pathways assignment for Kin 516. So the first thing I wanted to go over was what is ATP. So it stands for adenosine triphosphate, and it's energy from macronutrient oxidation, which is the transfer of oxygen, hydrogen, or electrons, and this is harvested and funneled through ATP. So here, macros are your proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And so there's a diagram there of how the process goes and then ends as ATP. Okay, and then food to energy. So what happens after we eat? Potential energy within ATP powers all of the cell's energy-requiring processes. And we learned from Chapter 5 that potential energy refers to energy as energy of position. And an example is a macro before releasing its stored energy in metabolism. The release of potential energy transforms into kinetic energy of motion. And then potential energy plus kinetic energy equals the system's total energy. Energy metabolism. So first, there's three stages. Stage of hydrolysis, prep stage, which includes the Krebs cycle, and then the oxidative stage. So micronutrient digestion, absorption, and assimilation into useful form. That's the first stage of this process. And then degradation of subunits into acetyl-CoA, which is acetic acid. And that's that's the second stage, which you have the Krebs cycle. And then finally, oxidation of acetyl-CoA to CO2 and H2O. So your last part here is waste production of this process. And so what have we gone over so far? Just to have a reminder of what we're trying to figure out here. So energy from macro oxidation is harvested and funneled through ATP, and potential energy within ATP powers the cell's energy requiring processes. Okay, so what are the processes? There's two major activities within the cell. One, extract potential energy from food and conserve, and two, extract and transfer chemical energy in ATP to power biologic work. ATP serves as the ideal energy transfer agent. Okay, so extract potential energy, transfer that energy into biologic work. Again, from Chapter 5, we learned that biologic work takes one of three forms. The first form is mechanical work, which is muscle action. The second is chemical work, biosynthesis, which is the building block atoms to synthesize compounds and tissues for maintenance and growth. And an example of this is muscle hypertrophy. And then the third form is transport work, and that is when cells produce ATP and organelles pump it uphill from low to high concentrations. Then you have interconnected pathways. So released energy during ATP hydrolysis, remember that was the first stage we went over earlier in the metabolism process, powers body functions such as glandular secretion, digestion, tissue synthesis, circulatory function, muscle action, and nerve transmission. Energy from ATP hydrolysis powers all forms of biologic work, which is the ATP cell's energy currency. The body always attempts to maintain a continuous ATP supply through different metabolic pathways. So now we will look into those pathways. And so we're going to go over two forms of ATP production within the cell. And the first one is in the cytosol. So within this, we have glucose, and the breakdown of a molecule of glucose is glycolysis. And this is anaerobic, which means without oxygen. So the breakdown here, there's two ATPs from the substrate level phosphorylation and glycolysis. And then further looking into glucose, there's a net yield of 32 ATPs from energy transfer during the complete oxidation of one glucose molecule in glycolysis, citric acid cycle, and electron transport. The complete breakdown of glucose yields 34 ATPs, but 2 of those ATPs are initially phosphorylate glucose. So 32 ATP molecules equals the net ATP yield from glucose catabolism in skeletal muscle. And then the other form of production to go over here within the cell is in the mitochondrion. And so this is aerobic, which means with oxygen. And this includes fatty acids, pyruvate from glucose, and amino acids. So energy from fat here, we're going to look at a 16-carbon fatty acid, which is palmitate. And there's 3 stages here. So stage 1, beta oxidation. Fatty acids undergo oxidative removal of 2 carbon units in the form of acetyl-CoA. There's 7 cycles, and it leaves 2 carbon of palmitate as acetyl-CoA. And so in the second stage, the residue from that acetyl-CoA is oxidized to CO2 via the citric acid cycle. And then in the third stage of this breakdown, electrons are derived from the oxidation of stages 1 and 2 and are passed to O2 via the mitochondrial respiratory chain, and it provides energy for ATP synthesis by oxidative phosphorylation, which yields 129 ATP. So ATP supply within the body. Cells have a small quantity of ATP, and it's continually resynthesized to regulate energy metabolism. ATP concentration changes rapidly. If there's a minimal decrease, it changes rapidly. And then an imbalance in this stimulates the breakdown of other energy-containing compounds to resynthesize ATP, which is energy transfer. So fat and glycogen represent the major energy sources for maintaining as-needed ATP resynthesis. And some energy also comes from phosphocreatine, which is called high-energy phosphates. And phosphocreatine is the large reservoir for ATP. So there are 3 prerequisites for the continual resynthesis of ATP. The first one is tissue availability of the reducing agent NADH, also the presence of oxygen in the tissues, and then finally sufficient concentration of enzymes and mitochondria to ensure energy transfer reactions proceed at their appropriate rates. So when these 3 factors are satisfied, hydrogen and electrons can shuttle uninterrupted down the respiratory chain to oxygen during metabolism. So ATP alone, the body stores 80 to 100 grams of ATP at any one time under normal resting conditions. But this is only enough power to power 2 to 3 seconds of maximum exercise. So as stated before, phosphocreatine is the large energy reservoir. So ATP alone does not represent a significant energy reserve. But that being said, a sedentary person does resynthesize an amount of ATP per day to approximately 75% of their body mass. And the quantity of ATP production over the adult lifespan equals the total ATP production of approximately the takeoff weight of 2 Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircrafts. So that's pretty incredible. So how does this apply? Humans require a continual supply of chemical energy to maintain numerous complex physiological functions. Human energy dynamics involve transferring energy via chemical bonds. In a sense, the cells receive as much energy as they require. So how the body maintains its continuous energy supply begins with ATP, which is the special carrier molecule of free energy. During strenuous physical activity, inadequacy in oxygen delivery creates an imbalance. Electron flow backs up and hydrogens accumulate. Pyruvate binds excessive hydrogens to form lactate, and lactate formation allows electron transport oxidative phosphorylation to continue to provide energy to our bodies as needed. Here are my references. Mainly use the text for this information, and then also this website was very helpful, bioinfo.org. Thank you.